At 6:30, I will go ahead and call our meeting to order. This is the joint meeting of the Plan Commission and Town Board. Hereby provided a written notice and the agenda of the public meeting as stated below. There is an opportunity for public comment as noted on the agenda upon recognition by the presiding officer. Roll call. Let's see. Richard, Lori, Rick, John, Anton, Terry, David, Carol, and who's online? Chris, Ben, Justin. Right. We'll start out with the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda. Okay, don't forget your microphone. Is there a second?
John, second.
John, second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All right. Approval of prior meeting minutes. We have a motion on that.
This is Chris. I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of June.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of approving our meeting minutes from June 7th?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Is there anyone who would like to speak to a matter that is not on the agenda? Nope. All right, then we'll close our public comment. And we'll move on to the first item on our regular agenda, which is the review and discussion of the Trails Impact Fee Report. Thanks, Phil, for making our meeting here.
You're welcome. Yes, good to be here.
Do you want to start by just summarizing the report?
Certainly.
Thanks.
Commissioners and board members, I assume you have our report of June 30th in front of you, which is the draft report of the needs assessment for trails facilities. And you're certainly familiar with impact fees for other facilities that have been done, and this is one for trails. And of course, the theory of impact fees is that the additional population and growth in the town would pay their fair share, proportionate share of the cost of these new facilities. So to start out that whole process, you have to estimate population and what the population growth would be. So on the first page of our report, we do that and summarize the population and household projections that we got from the state demographer, showing that we anticipate by the year 2040, in the next 17 years, an additional 233 households, which represents about a little over 14% increase in the number of households. So that's the number that we would use going forward as the share that would be borne by these new households for the impact that they would have on the need for trails. This assessment is also, if you move to page 2 of the report, based on the 2014 study that was done, Bicycle and Pedestrian Facility Implementation Study. And that was approved, and there were a number of options for trails and facilities to be built. And my understanding is that the board has narrowed down 2 parts of that, the segment 1A and the segment 4, with a couple of options under one of them that would have a slightly different location and design of the facilities, and so there would be a significant difference in cost. Also on that second page is then the summary of these costs, and we jump kind of right to the bottom line that option one, we get a total of 2.6 million sum for those identified improvements. 14.3% of that, which is the share, the proportion of new households, would be 373,000 and some dollars for that. That's divided by the number of new households, 233, would give you a trail impact fee of a little over $1,600, $1,604 for that option. The second option goes through the exact same math, but as noted, it's a significantly higher cost. 7.7 million times the same 14.3% is about 1.1 million of cost to be borne by those new households, or $4,731 per household for the impact fee. Page 3 goes through what's required by statute to estimate the impact on affordable housing. And as you'll see, I won't go through all those numbers. It would impact the cost of housing by 0.3% or perhaps as much as 1%. So certainly it's real dollars, but it's not significant considering the overall cost of a median value house in St. Joseph. The last pages of the report, we've got the map graphic that shows the various segments that were identified in that trail plan, including segments 1A and 4 that were part of taken into account here. And then you've got the more detailed cost estimates that, again, our engineering staff put together to allow us to make this estimate. Really the numbers kind of speak for themselves. Once you've identified the trail segments, once you've estimated the population growth, once you've identified the cost estimates for those trails, then the formulas simply churn out the numbers that you see. A trail impact fee of $1,600 for the lower cost option, or $4,700 per unit for the higher cost option. I have not been part of the discussions that the Planning Commission or Town Board has had on this, though I certainly have been in other years on impact fees of other things, but I have done this work with our staff behind the scenes, and I know that Lee Mann and others have followed through with you on this. So I would be happy to answer questions. Maybe you've got questions and comments about this, but that's my quick summary of this.
Thank you. My first question would be for the option 2, that's roughly $5 million more over option 1. Do we get any sort of extra benefit out of that in terms of, is that assuming that there's work being done on the road itself that we get some benefit from? Or is this purely the trail cost here?
Well, what it is, and if you go to Appendix A,
Yep.
And rather than share my screen, I'll assume you've got that in front of you, that it shows the option 1 under segment 1A. It says total off-road outside of existing right-of-way, and there's a cost of $985,000. And off-road in the right-of-way, there's a cost of $6 million. And so that is the significant cost difference that you're seeing in this, that there was a significant cost to do those the cost per lineal foot, and you can see that in kind of the middle column there, $176 per lineal foot versus something over $1,000 a lineal foot for the option 2, and that's what accounts for it. And you know, I'm not an engineer, so I can't tell you exactly what goes into these cost estimates, but that explains that, why there is such a significant difference.
Yeah, I guess I'm just trying to figure out, since some of this is like marked as road pavement, for instance, whether there's actually improvements to the road that happen as part of this or not. That may be a question we need to ask Lee at the board meeting, I guess.
Yeah, and again,
So
I
my
guess-
understanding of it
Yeah, go
would
ahead,
be that
Justin.
the only time we could do an improvement upon the road using these fees would be if the improvement is directly required as associated with the spending or expansion of that project. So if we were to say like, yeah, we're going to do, let's just use a very basic example of saying by adding this piece or this component, we require this stretch of road to be more structurally sound because it's a byproduct of the project. That was my understanding of the way it was defined to me. But they may have more, you know, limits to that than what I understand, right? Does that help, Anton, at all?
Well, it's kind of what I assumed, but I'm just trying to, I guess, quantify that a little bit. It's really more of a board question than at our level.
right, and again, you know, I'm not the engineer who delved into
Right.
all these cost estimates, but I can see, just comparing these in the more detailed lists of costs, there's a retaining wall, there's
Yes.
fencing, there's storm sewer pipes, storm sewer structures under the option that's in the right of way that you would not have in the other one, and that those things would add up and obviously do to the almost $5 or a little over $5 million additional cost.
Yep.
One thing I find confusing on your map, Lee, Phil, is 1A appears to be River Road and it has a designation for the segments for the bike on the county, but for instance, County Road V isn't called out on here, so I'm kind of trying to figure out how these roads are tying in. So when we're talking 1A option 1 and 2, I presume we're talking about the River Road segment, and then this number 4 option is this Stellan Farm Road area that's going, and we're talking about this running through the WisDOT right away. We need to have some clarification on whatever
Yeah.
we're looking at from that standpoint. So if
Right.
that
Yeah, I
means,
mean,
that means this isn't very clearly spelled out when you just sit and look at this. I know it just from the other meetings and other discussions that I've been involved with. And so right now, the focus of the impact fees is for River Road and not segment 4. Is
No,
that correct?
it's both. It's
right, yeah. This impact fee and these costs include that segment 1A plus 4. And you know, this is a map that was out of the previous bike PED study.
That your map, that we have a brand new map. You shouldn't be working off of that old map from 2014. You should be looking at.
this is the 2023 map.
Okay, we're good on the map then. Okay. All right, I'm gonna let you finish, do some more talking then.
Well, again, these are the segments that I understood that the board had identified as the ones they wanted to pursue, and they are the ones that have the various cost estimates
Okay.
attached.
So we're talking River Road and we're talking Fallon Farm Road going to Somerset,
Right.
to get to Somerset.
Yeah, it's the portion of, and in particular, it's portion of River Road that goes as far as Trout Brook, I think,
Correct.
from V to Trout Brook, I think. And that's why there's the two options, since there were the landowners that were
Correct.
uninterested in letting us run outside of our right of way.
Well, and that actually leads to the question I had is if we want to run outside the right of way, doesn't the town and aren't we going to have to compensate the landowners? Or is there some cost that we're not accounting for?
I would
For
guess
that?
there is.
Because I mean, if it were my land and you were going to take a chunk of it, I'd probably be inclined to say, okay, well.
Well, and
Here's what you're going to pay me for it.
so, and I'm gonna jump ship over to 4A. When they're talking about on-road and putting those comparisons on. It's already been determined that off-road and DOT right-of-way is the only way this is gonna go.
Yes, and if I can,
Because for on-road, Phil, there is no on-road option for 4A, and that's why we're having the discussion. And we're supposed to be working with Somerset and the DOT, and that's the plan that we should be putting our money into.
well, again, and let's just make sure we're using the terms right. On road means it's in, part of the highway pavement. Off-road would mean there's a separation between the highway and this trail. It might still be within the existing right-of-way, but it's separated from the highway pavement. And that's different than needing to acquire some additional right-of-way, which again, in Appendix A, there's that next to the right-hand column that is right-of-way acquisition square feet. And so you see that for 1A, but you don't see it for option 4, for segment 4. So we're not acquiring more right of way for 4. When it says off road, it just means it's separated from the highway pavement, but it's still within the right of way.
And your only goal was to come up, this is only to put the numbers to be able to collect the impact fee against the building permit and all, so for you, it's just math.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just the numbers guy.
Do you know the difference between 1A through the cornfield and 1A through the trees?
I don't. You know those cornfield and trees better than I do. So maybe you can tell me. Though, it certainly does show that there's a slightly different, cost. Going through trees would be a little more cost of the clearing versus going through a cornfield.
So 1A off-road in ROW could in fact be on River Road.
Right.
Yep, okay.
And in fact, I think that's the assumption here, because otherwise I don't see why we'd be dealing with pavement for both the trail and the road if we were putting in a separate trail to the side.
All right, Phil, what do you need from the Plan Commission tonight?
Just review this and see if you want to give us direction going forward on finalizing this, on making a recommendation as to which of these, which option you might want to go with, if at all. I mean, certainly the option is, you don't want to do any trail project, or you don't want to do an impact fee for the trail. But if you do decide to do trails and you decide to do impact fees, here's the options.
So Lori, Justin, do you have an opinion on, would the board within the next, let's say 5 years, I don't remember what the impact fee timeline is, even consider the $7 million option? Is it worth going and finalizing that one?
So I guess the question I really have coming back to this was, I guess, my fault for not keeping up with the Parks Committee, but was there a strong feeling for this build out? Obviously, there's a huge difference in price tag.
But, and I'm,
Or
I'm
maybe
still,
you might know more than I do.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around, you know, option two is obviously a lot more expensive. And to me, I'm not seeing any benefit of that versus option one. So I don't know why we would want to do
Well,
option two.
The reason is, and you haven't been at all the board meetings, so you don't have all the context. But the fundamental reason is there is at least one landowner, and I think more than one, that has flatly refused to allow the town to consider running a trail through their property or buying some part of their property for a trail.
I've been calling it Delwyn Farm Road, but it's Creasel Farm Road that we're really discussing going out of Holton, so excuse me if I confused
for a second
anyone to
point.
that
Yep.
fact. But if you follow Creasel to the end and then where the cul-de-sac is, that there was hope that we could get willing landowners going east. That we could hit the Somerset flyover and get it that far, but that didn't.
Though I think he's asking
Well,
about segment one.
But that's, yeah, because this is,
Going back
the
to
cost
River
difference is
Road.
purely between segment. Option one for segment one A, option one or option two for segment one A is the big
Yeah. So
difference.
some of the landowners along there have basically said, there's no way that you're using my land for a trail.
So we have, the town already owns from B to 30th Street. We already have that segment off-road taken care of,
From V to which?
30th Street.
Okay,
But
Well, but-
30th.
okay, yeah, because if you ought to.
And then from 30th,
You'd be sad.
we have to figure out how to get to Trout Brook Road, correct, Anton?
Correct.
Got it.
And that was where we had the gaps in being able to acquire right away from property owners. The only thing I would say is it was I don't know how that they were approached by that. I don't know how that approachment occurred.
Mhm.
And is it a possibility we're a different time, different place and potentially different owners and with more off-road trails being seen in other communities that they would maybe maybe they would consider land, but there is no land that we're going to get for free, so we're
Yeah.
either gonna have to have it somehow on the side of River Road.
And you're looking at the south side, right?
I don't know that that's been hard and fast, but I was presumed to be the.
It kinda
south-
makes
it's
sense
been
'cause
presumed to be the south side,
Ultimately, you want
or
to get to Willow River.
go back and take another crack at those landowners with hard numbers. This is how many feet we would like to buy, and the reason being is we're trying to get people off this road.
Yeah.
And see if their attitudes are any different than they were previously.
Yeah, some of them may be tough because those houses are pretty close to the road already.
And that's some of their
Yeah.
concern is then
Okay.
they become non-conforming setbacks.
Yeah. And literally, you're gonna have a
Bike path
path,
in your front-
like
in
right
your
in the
front
middle of
yard.
your front yard, so.
And some of them don't want a bike path on River Road either. They just plain don't want the people there.
Yeah,
And we need to acknowledge that this is their opinions and respect them and how we're gonna address it. And so,
so I was kind of curious about north or south, to the north side, you
right,
put a path there,
right,
those houses are a lot further away from River Road.
correct.
So I guess
And that's where Phil has put in there. If we have to acquire land, what it could be, and I don't think when you look at the acreage price of what land is going for currently, that he's too far. I think those numbers are probably spot on.
Yeah,
That we potentially are for the small amount of footage that we need. That's probably not far off.
So without the cooperation of those landowners, I mean, that 1A
It's
one,
gonna-
option one is off the table, basically.
No, it isn't. It.
Well, I mean, if they're not gonna cooperate,
If
right,
they don't cooperate,
then we can't.
then the option is it's gonna be some means on River Road.
Okay.
To connect those, they're gonna come on our right of way that's between Highway 35.
Yep.
And 30th Street.
And that's
And then they're
driving this
gonna,
expense,
then they're
right?
gonna hook onto River Road and they're gonna go from River Road, or not River, yeah, they'd be on River Road from 30th Street to
Okay.
Trout Brook Road.
Okay,
Yeah, so
so,
kind of,
Cause that gets us to the state park.
yeah, because Anton and I kind of have the same question. He asked about option two, and I kind of asked about option one. Is
I
either
feel
one
like-
of them even doable?
And that's where I was
Yeah.
trying to figure out quickly, reading this paper, having only seen it tonight to process all of the information that is on here.
so Phil, what do you need from us tonight?
Well, again, these are the numbers, so I think
Yeah.
it's exactly this discussion. Would you, if you went forward, would you choose a high cost or a low cost option? And you certainly know the nuances of that and what's involved in trying to do either of those. But yeah, these are numbers for your consideration, so you know that. And it sounds like segment 4 doesn't have the same kind of complications, and you could, and that obviously only has one option.
I think just given the difference in the two prices, I mean, I would feel more comfortable if there was more information like routes and everything and kind of how we came to these numbers and what were the real drivers, you know, a little bit beyond what the breakdown was. Just so I could process it myself a little bit better. Is sometimes, I mean, sometimes the more expensive option is the better option, and that becomes, you know, apparent. On the other side of that, you know, as you dig into it, on the other side of that too, I think the town needs to see what, if they have an appetite for a project of add them together, $7.6 million.
Right. Right.
And is that within your capital means? You know, debt capacities and all.
It's certainly within our capital capacity. The question
Is there other priorities? Yes.
well, not just are there other priorities, but is it something that the board is interested in spending the money on?
Yes, exactly.
Right. Well, and what's unsaid here explicitly is the impact fee would only cover 14% or about 1/7
Right.
of this. So even if you said, yep, we're going to go with the full thing and we're going to charge new households $4,700 each for the trail, the board still would, the town would have to come up with the other $6.5 million to pay for the other 80,
Yep.
whatever it is, 86% of that project.
Well, I think the question comes down to prep the expensive one or prep the more with a less expensive one and take it to the board. Is that really realistically what's being asked tonight, or is the committee looking for a 1-month review of this and discussion, I guess?
Does anyone have an opinion on when you're talking an impact fee that you're gonna add to the cost of a building permit, and this is only parks, does not include anything for public works if they were to jump in, and that it doesn't include anything for facilities if the fire department were to jump in, because that's what we're talking about, is a dollar amount added to a building permit.
Yeah, I think that we'd talked about some of that over the past few months, and there really wasn't anything that the fire department could charge under impact fees.
I'm just saying, if,
Yeah. And Public Works had decided not that they didn't have anything that
they weren't going to, but there's
that they didn't have anything that they could,
right now
because all of there were no roads
that qualify.
that qualified for impact fees because they need to be improved in a certain in a certain way.
So I think that's a good point right there. So basically, all of the impact, this $4,700. Phil, do you know what our previous impact fee was when we had all three on there back in the day?
No, I'm sorry, I
But
don't,
I
I,
was thinking-
I
I
don't
was
have that in front of us, but yes, you're right. There was fire and parks and road impact fees.
So wasn't
several
that,
years ago.
that's what I'm trying to remember. Am I even close? And maybe Chris Matter or Carolyn remember what that number was. And for some reason, I thought it was in that $3,000 to $4,000 range at one time, or maybe even higher. Does that ring a bell with either of you?
Yeah, not too much. It wasn't $1,000. I was more than that, double, yeah, more.
I've actually got the numbers from 2021 here. We didn't have fire at the time, but we were collecting $4,129 in road impact fees and $704 in park. So a total of about $4,800. Yep,
And that was 2021?
that was in 2021.
And we're not collecting anything anymore.
No,
So this would actually be marginally less than.
marginally less than.
Collecting.
So all we would, so if you wanted to,
But I'm not as worried about that as I am
Yeah.
about just, I mean, we can always refund the impact fees if we don't use them. But I'm just,
and we have.
I would be surprised if this board went for a $7 million project. And that's almost more than we've done for like our major road projects. Yeah,
I've got one, I guess, question, because I was one of the board members who voiced my opinion against having a bike trail on River Road or a bike path on River Road, because I think people drive down that road like insane hoodlums. I call it St. Joe's drag strip. But I guess my question here is, if the board was convinced on this, does it improve safety for those who wish to use as a bike trail? I think I see Chris shaking her head. I think she's on mute, but
Yeah, I'm a
to me,
cyclist. I ride that road. I'll die someday,
it
but
is-
I like it.
I
and
won't
it's-
ride that road because it's crazy.
Yeah, so I think that's the thing that if it's gonna be based, that discussion, then it has to be based on the premise that it's 7 million, yes, it's expensive, yes, the money is raised. I think we said 17 or 18% through impact fees. But to me, if people are gonna continue to utilize it as a bike path, which it seems like that demand is not going to go down, then we should take action as a board, and this would be me speaking from my own seat as saying, you know, whether I like it or not, it's my job to facilitate what the majority of the town wishes. And if the town and residents around it wish to use it that way, and we want to coordinate having these parks interconnect, then that's, you know, that's a reality, whether we want to spend 7 million on that road project. But I would say, if you're going to improve the safety and you're going to make sure that the residents are serviced in which they wish to, you know, have that access, then that would be the direction I would lean, is just, but do it once and do it once right. Because if there's anything that Rainbow Street has taught us, this nickel and diming half-baked solution is not the direction to go, because we just ended up spending 175% of probably what it would have cost us to just do it once right. So I think that would be where my opinion would be.
And if I can interject, commissioners and board, it's obvious, but let me just state it so it's in front of us, that riding on the highway surface itself can be very dangerous. Even if a trail is within the right of way and in the immediate shoulder, that's still safer than being out in the highway surface itself. Obviously, a trail that would be separated by 20 or 30 feet, you know, in its own lane and very well separated, is more safe, but it's still safer to have a separate lane that would have its own markings, and it would be visually, you know, a different place for bikers and pedestrians.
Yeah, and that to me would be option one would be, so option two is safer than what we have, but really
Mhm.
expensive. option one is actually safer, to me, if I'm reading this right, option one would be safer than option two. And cheaper, if we could pull it off.
And it also
Which-
seems like option that the more expensive option would also be considered on par with a significant road project because you would have to do significant changes to the road.
Yeah.
That's what. I agree, Ben, because that's what I was thinking. In order to make that happen, it would have to basically be a major road project for that segment of road in order to build up that shoulder to support the pavement and how it would be now be used.
Yeah, because I'm assuming that you couldn't squeeze in a
It's-
bike trail
it's
with the
not
gap
like-
between the road within the existing right of way. It would just be in essence, widening the road.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not like you can just go and pour a new strip of blacktop or concrete
Yeah, we don't- we
beside
don't-
on the
We
shoulder.
don't
and
have
call
an
it a
extra
day.
30 feet of right of way to work with.
So I guess here's my question is there anything that prevents us from, as well, I guess, is there any pushback from the committee to say something like drafting up for option B with the intent, like, what's the limitation of option A for the probability of it getting quote unquote approved, I think is how John put it, or getting it done? I guess I don't understand quite the statement, John.
Are you talking option one, Justin, not A?
Yes. Yeah, sorry.
So you're talking, I lost my page here.
Well, I was trying to understand what John was saying, which was if we can get it done. I
Well, yeah,
don't-
because option one, if we can't get the land, then option one's,
Off the table.
pointless because we can't do it. But from everything I'm hearing, it seems like all effort at this point would be best invested in getting option one to work. As
Sure,
opposed to
'cause-
pursuing
Mhm.
option two.
Sure, because it's more economical.
It's more economical and I think it's actually safer.
Yes.
So it's
what's
better
the-
in every way.
What's your fallback if we can't get the land?
Well, and then your fallback becomes option two. Or potentially, and Lori touched on this, potentially some kind of a hybrid where we use option one as far as we can. Because I'm thinking there's a few on there that probably aren't gonna be a problem. And then when you hit the ones that are a problem, you route them up to the road. So maybe.
The traffic calming
Yeah,
trail.
And there is something to be said for
yeah,
that.
well,
And I am aware other communities do this.
yeah, I mean, it's.
They're saying, we're gonna take.
To me,
what
it's
we
better
get,
than
we're gonna-"
doing option two all the way along a pretty long stretch where I think option one is totally viable. And then making the whole stretch equally dangerous, although I'm sure having someone swerve up to the road creates a risk. But it kind of gets back to me, there's more of a specific approach and looking at what a hybrid would be and if that would make sense, as opposed to just saying we only have option one or option two, because option two seems too extreme along that whole stretch, because again, a bunch of that stretch, I would be surprised if there was a whole lot of
So,
pushback.
so this is the needs assessment.
That's what I was just saying, we're just talking about the money, we're not talking about the engineering and gymnastics of
Yeah,
execution.
Yeah, I feel like that's a good discussion to have when we get to the engineering thing. I'm trying to figure out if that needs to impact the
This
money
whole-
side.
Well, we kind of
here.
have a chicken and the egg, because if the engineering of a hybrid, for example, could make this whole thing, $3.5 million
Mhm.
instead of
Yep.
$6 million.
Either
then-
way, this is,
But if the board decides that they want to collect the larger impact fee, we already know that's in the ballpark of what we've collected in the past. And I
if
would assume we could do like a partial refund of that if the project wound up being
we do,
less.
we have done refunds of impact fees in my terms, my time on the board. That has occurred when it wasn't used or it didn't work out, and yes, it was refunded.
That makes sense. So then we potentially, the board would move forward with the, the $4,700 impact fee.
Yeah, that's what I was
can't-
trying to allude to. Sorry if it wasn't clear. I
Yeah.
was just trying to say, right, if there's really, the only harm done really is the fact that we either can find a solution that's cheaper. I just don't want to go into this and go, we're going to go for the lower amount and then find out that now the impact fee is indeed, I think we said 17%. It's going to only equal 9.5% of the project or something. And boy, we really, gosh golly, should have just gone for the bigger amount first and then risk sending a refund versus the reverse of not going for it and then being.
Yeah, that really helps because, so which goes back to your point is you don't want to try and cut corners and then tie your hands and
Yep.
then not have fun. So now I understand what you were saying is what the fallback is. So basically what we're saying is, shoot for the larger one. If it turns out we don't need that, we refund the difference or
Yep.
use
always
it on
get into the
additional
moon
pass
and
or,
then
okay.
deliver
That really
what
helps.
you can.
Sorry. I'm just trying to wrap my head around this. So thanks. That answered all my questions.
Well, and if I can interject, I think a hybrid solution, could work out, that's, you always go for the pragmatic route, what you can actually do versus what, the ideal is. You folks know the properties and the property owners better than I do. So obviously one that would be hybrid and come off the road and back up once or twice might work. If you're going to scoot back and forth 6 or 7 times,
Well, that's
then
not
you've
gonna
created
work.
an engineering nightmare. And I don't think anybody would want that.
And I
So the
don't-
specific properties make a difference, what we're talking about here.
So Phil, I don't know that it would be a 6 or 7 time in this short segment. I think I'd have to go and look at it, but I think it'd be an on off, and I agree that's flipping back and forth in this segment. No,
Yeah, my gut feel is we'd probably be able to get with option 1 most of the way to 37. And then potentially have to do option 2 from that ballpark. So like half and half.
yeah, but
I wouldn't think you'd go up and down because once you go up, you just stay up past the.
and getting it Trout Brook, everyone knows that gets us to the DNR
Yeah,
property.
exactly.
Once we're on the south side.
Yes. Yeah, if you're on the south side.
And we already know that the DNR property has has attracted an increase in utilization of their bike trails, and that it's adding to the load that's on River Road to V to 35. We already know that. Or I think everyone would presume that.
So is the board looking for a recommendation from us or?
Well, I think we need to tell Stan Tech what to present at the board meeting. And because they've got a week to prepare if there's any additional information that we want them to have. And I would assume that the board would also be looking for a recommendation from us in terms of option.
Well, my gut feel based on the questions I asked and the answers was probably go with the 4,700
Yeah,
impact fee with the idea that if we end up with a hybrid and try and use option 1 as much as possible within reason. And if we don't then need all of that, we could deal with that at that point in time and in worst case refund.
so in terms of the impact fees, I think what I'm hearing is we go with option 2
Yes,
being sort of the worst case,
yes,
with the assumption that the board could choose to reduce those in the future and refund any that had already been paid based on the actual engineering cost, which hopefully we can drive down.
I don't know that a future board would. It's kind of a one or the other amount that's being presented to the plan commission this evening as I see it. And I don't know that a future board would go. I'm just thinking of how it would kind of shake out. In order to change an impact fee that we are collecting. Or we can drop them, of course. Easily, but to go and change an impact fee on what you're going to collect
Need the
would
study.
be, you would need to go through this process in order to change your collection amount. So you either refund it if you don't, you collect and refund what you do not use. Or to reduce the collection amount, you go through this, or if we're going to say, for instance, like we did with Public Works and the fire department, it was just a matter of a sweeping motion that was presented to the board and boom, we were done with it.
So if down the road, it turned out it didn't cost that much, would it have to go through another study? Say, for example, if they said, well, we want to,
I'm just saying,
Use-
John, if they did the project and the project came in under budget, this money belongs to the park department and they could realign it to another project.
that's what I was asking, is could they just say, well, let's,
We don't say,
invest it on
we
one
don't say we did this project, the project came in under budget and we're gonna give you a refund. That is not how I have seen impact fees to work. Is that correct, Phil?
I don't know how that detail of it, so I don't want to say.
That's my
yeah,
understanding.
because I mean, we have lots of needs for additional trails, so that even further kind of, to me, would reinforce.
But I do know when we draw money from impact fees, we have to tell them what the project is and how much money we're going to take out. Carrie might be able to speak to this clearer because she was doing the withdrawals when we did the playground. Because that money when that money is sitting in our budget, is it earmarked for a specific type of project?
It just kind of depends what's coming up. I know like the major road stuff. No, I can't say no. I say no, it's not.
Yeah, it belongs, the impact fee is for the parks, or the impact fee is for the fire department, or, that's what, and this one is specifically to parks.
So at the time that we take money out from the sequestered account or whatever we'd call it, that's the time at which we need to make sure we're following the rules, that it's used on an appropriate project, that it's balanced with
And,
certain
and as
percentages.
Phil has already pointed out to us a couple of different ways, this is about 14.5% of the project cost.
Yep.
And the likelihood of us doing either of these projects and not being able to utilize the entire 14.5% that we have collected is pretty close to nil.
Yeah.
More likely that we don't do any of these projects and we just refund.
And
the
then
entire impact
that's
fee.
exactly right.
Well, I'm comfortable just saying that Stan Tech should go ahead with the larger amount. If there's any additional detail that needs to be fleshed out on that. And that we recommend to the board that they adopt the 4,700 or whatever it winds up being.
4731.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
This is, impact fees come off new residential residences. By
Correct.
law, I'm assuming you can't get impact fees off commercial developments. Is that right?
I think for roads they do.
Yeah,
But not for parks. This type, we have to get off residential.
I think that's worth verifying, Chris, but I think the impact fees. I'd like that clarified now that you've asked that question, because my thought was, it went across all building permits, no matter whether it was commercial or not. But that I think is an excellent question to be hard line, get an answer on. And I think that it's fair of the plan commission to ask that question.
Okay, I asked a hardline question.
And we're asking that of Stantec, or who are we directing that question to?
report to find out.
Okay.
And if they want to ask Stantec or the attorney or whoever that person is, that's what we need.
I know we did put commercial in the mix when we were doing the roadway impact fees. And it got to be kind of a complicated formula, but it can be figured out. I also recall that it wasn't very much of the mix, but you may be closer to the numbers that even though you add it to it and a given commercial property might be worth more, there isn't that much commercial use compared to the hundreds of residential units we're expecting.
And that's what I think. Oh, I agree with that point, Phil, and I think that was part of the conversation I recollected. And again, maybe Carolyn Barrett can shed some light on some of those conversations, but I think just get a hard and fast answer is the way to go.
Yeah, well, I
That's
think
what I said, yeah.
if I can jump to kind of the punchline, I think there's a two-part question. One, can we legally include commercial in the trail impact fees? I think probably so, since we did it for roadways. And then the second question is, does it really make much difference? If it only adds, 2% to the pot of impact fees, then maybe you don't want to even bother. But if it adds, 20%, then maybe it is worth looking at.
And I'm going to take it one step further, Phil. Everybody pays no matter who we are. I think that's the easiest way to do it. It's new construction. It was easy with roads and fire because commercial uses roads and they could potentially need the fire department, but well, like I said, if we can have a once and done and everybody pays, to me, that's the way to go. Because in a commercial project, I don't think this fee on top of all the other fees that they pay, I don't think it's any more of a hardship to them than what it would be anyone building a new home.
Well, we can certainly check out the first parts of that and see what the difference might be.
Yeah, it's too important of a question to be guessing.
If we included commercial, would that change the impact fee?
Phil says it's nominal impact.
Well, I don't know. I don't know. That's what we're going to find out. I mean, we'd have to come up with a rationale for how we assess the impact. And we did it by traffic numbers on the commercial previously. It wasn't by acreage or square foot. It was, how much traffic do the commercial properties generate, and then it was proportional to that. And we might assume something similar. So we would have to.
Phil, is that a trip rate chart? Is that where that comes in?
Yeah, that's what we did. And that's easier because there are trip rates for vehicles. I don't know that we can find a standard trip rate for trail usage from commercial uses. That'll be the challenge.
I think if you want to talk about commercial and trip rates, and this is what we're discussing, I think the trip rates that commercial would generate would by far impact if they're traveling on the same roads our bikes are on. Just a thought.
Well, the law says that impact fees shall bear a rational relationship to the need for new, expanded, or improved public facilities that are required to serve land development.
Right.
So
And
if you're.
trails are pretty big right now.
So I think it might come down, in terms of if it came down to a business challenging the impact fee, it would come down to, do they expect riders on the trail coming to their business? Because if they don't, then I think they'd have a really strong argument that this is not serving that development.
Right.
And that's why I said this is an attorney question, because this is a bigger.
But the amount of commercial development that we have in the town over the time span of the impact fee is probably nil or very close to it.
I'm a little concerned about the areas we could be talking where the commercial could occur. And the impact that that commercial will have on these people using these areas. I think it could be quite a bit more than what we're anticipating.
So are you asking Stan Tech to come up with a commercial projection as well?
I want someone other than us at the table trying to answer this question.
Lori, we have that project coming up from Stan Tech that we greenlit at the last town board meeting.
Yes,
For them to look at that larger space that has the potential to convert over to commercial.
yes. And
I
I
think
would,
maybe
and I would,
once-
and I would say right along that thing, if there was off-road bike trails as a part of that planning and where those roads are gonna run on that project that we were discussing, yeah, I think we just need to go back to the simple part of what Phil said on, can we consider commercial? And if that's a yes, then we need to know what are the parameters that we need to look at in order to include commercial.
Yeah, what is the
And-
rational basis? Yeah.
So I'm willing to take a shot at a motion.
All right.
I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the board to move forward with the option 2. Option 2 impact fee of $4,731 to account for the worst case and also to explore expanding the impact fee to commercial development as well as residential.
I'll second that. Any further discussion tonight? All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right. Phil, is that enough detail for you to know what to do for the board meeting next week?
Yes, I think so.
Great. Thank you very much.
Okay, good. You're welcome.
Have a good evening.
Okay.
Thanks. Great. Thank you, John, for your concise motion. As always.
Seemed like it should have more words to it.
Let's see, moving on. Number 2, applicability of the sign ordinance to lighted sign at county EV intersection. I actually wound up not talking to Jay on this one because we have nothing in our sign ordinance that prohibits bright signs or controls brightness of a sign at all. We prohibit external lights from being directly visible, but we don't have any restrictions on internally lit signs. So I don't think there's anything that we can do from an ordinance point of view, but somebody could talk to someone at the church and ask whether it's possible to adjust the brightness on the sign. I don't know who, because there's nobody at the church right now. They don't have a pastor, they don't have a secretary. So it's like just sort of the volunteers there at the moment.
So from a diplomatic standpoint, I believe still, if you get a piece of paper delivered to your door, and maybe you have to send it more than one time, I think it's more effective than a phone call between two people. That's my opinion. And the same way with emails. Emails nowadays come and go. They don't, it's getting to the point, it's like a dead letter box that when you send it to an email. And the church will, they're gonna rebound from what's going on there.
Yep.
Like all things do. And someone at the church is still taking care of janitorial or maintenance services. Even in transition.
Yep.
And so by having the letter, it could well be, it was like, oh, we never thought of that.
Hmm.
And maybe it is. There, those lights, if they can't turn them down, there are other options with lower. They don't call it wattage, and I don't know the right word, but they're not as bright. For replacing them.
Yep.
And sign companies can take care of those things.
What does the town define animated as?
We don't really have a definition, I don't think. I don't think there's anything really defining that in the ordinance.
It's lumens. The lumens are too bright.
Right,
LUMENS.
but I think what he's asking is that sign does change periodically, and we prohibit animated signs in the ordinance. Though we also, at the time that the ordinance was adopted, we also grandfathered in all existing signs in the town.
That was not an animated or did not have motion at the time that was drafted.
Well, it depends on your definition, because it did change.
Okay,
And I think that's Ben's question is, what do we call animated? Does it have to be something that changes more than once a minute or something, for instance, to?
Yeah,
count as
they have
animated?
the animation regulations for billboards, for example, are very specific in terms of, you can't have like a cartoon going across it. You can change the entire sign. Yeah, the one regulation I saw was like once every 30 seconds. And then some of them even get into how can you change it? Is it complete? It just switches. Can you do a sweep? If you do a sweep, how long can it be? And I don't remember any of that, because I'll be honest, I don't remember any discussions about digital signs. We were thinking about lighted signs.
Yeah.
But at the time, a lighted sign in our discussions was your typical piece of plastic with a light behind it. Or something with a light shining on it. I don't think we accounted for digital signs.
Yeah, the only thing we said is that we exempted time and temperature displays. So that suggests that we did think about signs that change.
Yeah.
But
I think Chris has a question.
Yeah, thanks. So I just, going back to your premise, Anton, why we don't want to talk to Jay about this, your decision that you made. There's a fine line here, because under illumination, I'm looking at the sign ordinance. It says light shall be shielded to prevent spillover onto the right of way or into adjacent residential properties. And that's basically what's happening here is we have residences that live nearby that are saying, this is bright, this shines into our house at night, it's a nuisance. So I feel like we really should have Jay take a look at this and in terms of our ordinance. And then the other thing I just wanted to, we do prohibit also flashing signs, but like you said, we allow the time and temperature signs. So it talks about the rate of change of this information no more than every 4 seconds as not to distract drivers and create a hazard to traveling public. I don't think that sign goes, I think it's slower than every 4 seconds, obviously.
yeah,
Yeah,
So I hear you on that. It's not blinking. But I do think we have due diligence as a town. They've brought it to us. And I do think we should have Jay, our zoning administrator, go out and look at it at night and then look at the ordinance.
well, I do think that we should contact them, because otherwise they're not going to know that somebody thinks there's a problem.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I think the ordinance doesn't apply, both because we don't control brightness and because we explicitly say that, like, any existing sign at the time the ordinance was adopted is exempt from the regulations.
I hear you. I just think that Lori made a point. They have changed that sign since when our ordinance came in. Yes, they already had a lit sign there, but after our ordinance went in place, it changed. That sign, the illumination of it has changed since the original lighted sign. Whatever I don't know what they did, but it's different and it's a lot brighter now. So yeah, contacting the church and saying, hey, we've got some residents concerned about it. As a town, we wanted to let you know, is there something you can look at or do about it and see where that goes? That makes sense. But I just
Maybe
don't want
between
to
the
shut
hours
it
of
down that we can't do anything yet because of our ordinance, because I do think there are some things here that we should have Jay look at.
Maybe they could just turn the brightness down between the hours of like 1 AM and 5 AM. From the center of the sun to 50% of the center of the sun. So I don't know if you guys have ever seen that thing on a rainy day. If you drive past that thing on a rainy day or the fog out, you will see that before you see headlights.
Yeah.
True.
Does that create any sort of traffic hazard?
I'm
Well,
sure
I'm
it
wondering
does.
if there's this, well, I'll be honest. Having driven past it at night, it is a safety issue.
Yep.
I'm not wondering, it's a safety issue because it blinds you momentarily if you look at that sign.
Well, there is a provision in our code for that. I think it's worth looking
Yeah.
at.
Could it fall afoul of DOT regulations on signage?
Probably not. I've seen worse signs, at least in other places. So if there are, it's just not enforced well.
Well, I would agree with Lori. I mean, it seems like we should start with sending a letter.
Sure.
And I'll be honest, I wouldn't, in an initial contact, I don't know that I'd start quoting
The
things in
ordinance.
the ordinance that may or may not apply. And I would hope it wouldn't be necessary to quote the ordinance. And I think the main problem is at night.
Yep.
Because the problem is you needed that bright during the day.
Mhm.
What you need to do is dim it at night and
Right.
ask if they have an option to dim it at sunset and brighten it at sunrise.
And if they know there's complaints, I mean, they might just say, oh, sure, no problem.
Right.
And
Yeah.
problem solved. Sure,
Yeah, especially if they have an easy way to do it.
it already exists and nobody's doing it.
Yeah. Yeah, we need to click this checkbox.
Sure. Yeah, I think that'd probably be step one, right?
So
So we should make a motion to ask the board to ask Jay to send a letter.
that works.
I will make a motion to recommend to the town board that they ask the town zoning administrator to write a letter to the church asking if it is possible to reduce the brightness of the church's sign between sunset and sunrise.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. You get that, Terry? Thank you. Okay. And then we'll just see what happens from there. And we probably should be keeping a note, someplace I should be keeping a list of like things to do with ordinances next time that we review them. And I think like adding something about brightness to the sign ordinance seems like it would be a good idea in the future.
Going into where this goes.
Mhm.
This conversation held on this date about that particular sign and.
Hmm.
just regarding signs. And this is not a church, but it was in fact a Quick Trip in North Hudson, as a matter of fact, that I realized I was filling up my car with gas and there was no blasting noise. The music, outside music was gone. The squawking for, okay, welcome and go ahead on pump, whatever it is. And there's a great big mute button to turn off the pumps that want to advertise to you. And that is all brand spanking new. And I think that when things come up such as this, it's worth noting because this is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And yes, I think that signs with motion and blinking lights and I think that there isn't need for a hugely bright church sign on County Road E. It's clearly visible, it's easy to read. And the message is there without it being displayed in the manner it's being displayed currently. I think there's room for improvement, and I think it was something the sign people came in and said, this is what you can do, this is how much it's gonna cost, it'll save you this much in electric. And they're just going along with it, and those people that probably made that decision are now no longer involved in that part of the church business.
And
so
I'd
that's
argue
just-
that with how bright it is, it actually makes it more difficult to read at night.
I think it is too. It's offensive.
All right, moving on to number 3, the Fall Festival. I'm going to, I volunteered to like hang out at the Fall Festival and represent Plan Commission. We'll have a table. If anyone else would like to hang out for a while too, that'd be great. I'm going to write like a 1-pager on town zoning and how it affects the residents. And also probably have something on like our newer ordinance changes from where newer is probably like the last 3 or 4 years since we last did the Fall Festival at least. St. Croix County may send somebody from community development, and if they do, they'd probably be sharing our space at the table. And they might have also have someone from parks or stormwater management, or we suggested maybe have some information on well water testing while they're out here. Still kind of up in the air. I think Carolyn was going to talk to some people at community development. And not strictly on Plan Commission, but while I have you here, John, if we could get someone from Northwest Communications to attend, or possibly T-Mobile, that might be useful for them and useful for residents.
I will work with Terry to
No,
send something as a through the technology committee. But
Yep.
yeah, that's a great idea, because that should be a win for everybody if they
yep.
stop by.
So that's my,
And it's only like
Mhm.
3 or 4 hours.
yeah, it's 4 hours. It's like
Yeah.
10 to 2. On the 16th, you can get the details from Terry.
Yep.
So that's my update on the Fall Festival. Let's see, before we go on to standing items, well, no, we'll do the standing items next. Review of budget. I just had one question, which was, there was something here. It said subdivision and swimming pool ordinance, and I was thinking, I don't remember doing anything around swimming pools recently. Is my memory just faulty, or is there something? Is
Is that the
is the memo
administrative
wrong?
correction we made at the town board?
There was an update on ordinance.
Excuse me, Justin, what did you, could you state that again, please?
I don't
My
remember.
question was, is that the modification we had due to the administrative error of reloading the zoning ordinance for swimming pools, or was that the exception we had to make?
That charges for posting the ordinance change for the swimming pools.
Okay, so that was the correction we made because the wrong version or something was. I don't for the file,
No,
for
because there was,
the publication.
there was an error in the ordinance. And the board corrected it, and so we had to post it in the newspaper. And that's what that charge is.
Oh, I thought the error was that we actually had the wrong version.
Basically,
Is it-
I mean, it was.
Yeah, I think it was a clerical error.
I was just curious because I didn't remember that coming through plan commission. So that was my only question. I'm not like overly stressed about it, but I was wondering if there was something there.
Was that a public notice of a meeting for, that was done? The date is a June 8th check that was written, so that would have been paying for something that was an action that occurred in May perhaps? So you had a May bill that you paid in June?
Yeah, I think it was for the public. It was to notice the public hearing for that ordinance change.
So anyway, that was my only question on budget stuff. Did anyone else have any budget questions? Guess not. All right. Then we can go on to updates from county. I have no updates from the county. Lori or Justin, have you heard anything from the county?
I have none.
Great.
Oh,
And any updates on complaints?
No.
no.
All right. Recommendations to the town board. I think we've got two. We've got one to ask Jay to write to the church, and we've got one to adopt the impact fees.
And church one goes out from Jay for however it's distributed. Included to at the very least you as the chair.
All right, sure. That'd be great. Items for next agenda. Anyone have anything in particular? I have one
I was-
note. Oh, sorry, Justin.
No, I was going to ask, do we have a plan for looking at older ordinance yet? For any cleanup or updates that are required from the state modification? And that was one of the things the town board had asked the plan commission to start doing, was reviewing the older ordinance and making updates.
Yeah,
And
I
I
will-
think we missed where we were
Yep.
going to discuss that or how.
Yep, I will make a note to get that. I will probably not be at the August meeting because I will be on vacation. Depending on time zones and stuff, I may be able to call in. I'm not planning on getting sick. So, but 6:30 works actually pretty well because that's like 6:30 a.m. I can call in at 6:30 a.m. But Chris, if you'll be around, would you be okay leading the meeting?
Sure.
Okay, good.
Can I ask someone, is it okay if I do it remote and someone will be there to open up and let folks in? As backup for me?
Yep, I'll make sure I'm here live.
Okay, thanks.
And Terry will be here too, I think.
Yeah.
So yep, that should be great.
Thank you.
Items for the town board agenda, I think just the same two that we had in recommendations. I guess I will take a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Seconded by Carol. All right, thanks, everybody. And thanks, Justin, for the reminder about the ordinances. I will put together a plan and make sure that I get that to Chris ahead of the next meeting.
I was just hoping you were going to say, yeah, I had ChatGPT read through them all and here's the 6,100 we need to go back through. No, I'm kidding. Have a great night, guys. Hope you all had a happy 4th.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Thanks. Bye.
Have a good night.
Did you call an item for the next week?